The massive research station hummed with an electric tension as HFY stepped through the pressurized airlock. Her sleek silver uniform, adorned with intricate Centaurian rank insignias, contrasted sharply with the more practical human station attire. Holographic displays flickered around her, casting soft blue shadows across her angular features. Outside the massive viewport, the galaxy sprawled like a dark canvas sprinkled with distant starlight. Massive research vessels drifted near the station, their hull designs ranging from smooth Centaurian crystal tech to the more industrial human spacecraft with their utilitarian rectangular shapes. HFY's communication implant translated the station's background chatter, her lip curling slightly with disdain. Humans were loud, emotional, and seemingly chaotic, everything her carefully engineered civilization despised. She had been sent as a diplomatic observer, but her true mission was to evaluate human technological capabilities. The station's central hub was a marvel of multi-species engineering. Holographic interfaces shifted between multiple alien languages, while robotic maintenance units scurried along magnetic pathways, repairing microscopic damages. A group of human technicians worked nearby, their conversations punctuated by occasional laughter and animated hand gestures. "Inefficient," HFY muttered, watching a human engineer recalibrate a quantum communication array, where her people would use precise genetic algorithms and mathematically perfect calculations. These humans seemed to rely on intuition and creative problem-solving. A small drone hovered near her, its sensors scanning her biosignature. The station's AI, a hybrid system developed through collaborative human-alien research, recognized her diplomatic clearance. Soft ambient music played, a bizarre human concept of creating emotional atmosphere in a technical environment. One of the human technicians, a young man named Jae-sung, approached her with a datapad. His casual stride and friendly smile immediately set her on edge. "Welcome to Frontier Station Omega," he said, his voice surprisingly warm. "We've been expecting the Centaurian diplomatic team." HFY's response was clipped and precise. "I'm here to observe, not to engage in unnecessary social interactions." Jae-sung chuckled, a sound that seemed to irritate her even more. "We're preparing for a major research expedition into the unexplored quantum regions. Our preliminary data suggests some fascinating anomalies." Before she could respond, alarms suddenly blared. Multiple holographic screens erupted with warning signals. Strange energy signatures began appearing at the station's quantum detection grid. Something was approaching from the deep, dark spaces between known star systems. The station transformed instantly. Human and alien personnel moved with surprising coordination. Robotic defense systems powered up, energy shields rippled across the station's outer hull, and communication channels burst into multilingual activity. HFY watched, her initial contempt slowly giving way to a reluctant curiosity. These humans moved with a precision that contradicted her previous assumptions. Their seemingly chaotic environment was actually a complex adaptive system. Jae-sung was already issuing commands, his fingers dancing across multiple holographic interfaces. Quantum scanners, nano repair bots, and advanced sensor arrays responded to his instructions with remarkable speed. Unidentified quantum signature detected, the station's AI announced in multiple languages. Potential first contact scenario imminent. The viewport transformed, showing a shimmering distortion in space. Something was approaching, something that didn't conform to any known galactic travel protocols. HFY found herself involuntarily leaning forward, her professional detachment momentarily forgotten. Whatever was coming, this human station seemed prepared in a way her own civilization might not be. Her communication implant translated a rapid-fire exchange between station personnel. They weren't panicking, they were preparing, adapting, strategizing. In real time, something fundamental was about to change. And HFY, for the first time in her carefully structured life, felt a spark of genuine excitement. The unknown approached. The galaxy held its breath. End of Part 1. The quantum anomaly erupted like a silent scream across the galactic spectrum. Space itself seemed to twist and fracture, revealing impossible geometries that defied everything known about dimensional physics. Massive alien defense networks, networks that had stood unbroken for millennia, began to disintegrate within seconds. Centaurian battleships, Zarkonian planetary defense platforms, and even the legendary crystalline warships of the Neuron Collective suddenly went dark. Jae-sung's fingers flew across the holographic interfaces, his face illuminated by cascading data streams. "This isn't a conventional attack," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Haiwon noticed how his initial panic had transformed into pure, focused concentration. The station's quantum scanners picked up impossible readings. Whatever was approaching wasn't just a weapon or a ship. It was something that existed between reality and imagination. Fractal-like energy patterns danced across the screens, revealing glimpses of structures that seemed to breathe and think. Simultaneously, robotic defense systems began activating automatically. Swarms of nano-defense drones launched from hidden compartments, their metallic bodies shifting and reconfiguring in mid-flight. They moved with an organic fluidity that was both beautiful and terrifying. Quantum integrity at 62%, the station's AI announced. Dimensional stability compromised. Haiwon watched in shocked silence as human technicians began implementing strategies that would have been considered suicidal by Centaurian military standards. They weren't trying to fight the approaching threat conventionally. They were adapting, reshaping their entire defensive strategy in real time. Jae-sung activated a series of experimental quantum shields. Unlike traditional energy barriers, these were living systems, adaptive networks that could reconfigure themselves based on incoming threat patterns. It was science that bordered on magic. Suddenly, the first wave hit. It wasn't an explosion. It wasn't a traditional attack. Reality itself seemed to ripple and bend. Sections of the station began to shift. Walls momentarily became transparent, showing impossible landscapes that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions. "Dimensional breach detected," shouted another technician, a woman named Yoon-ji. Her hands were moving so fast they almost blurred, routing emergency power, redirecting quantum stabilization systems. The human team wasn't just defending, they were communicating with the anomaly, trying to understand its fundamental nature. Where other civilizations would have responded with pure destructive force, humans were attempting communication. Robotic assistance units began performing impossible calculations. Quantum computers worked alongside human intuition, creating defense. Strategies that seemed to emerge from pure creativity. It was like watching a living, breathing organism respond to a threat. Haiwon realized something profound was happening. The humans weren't just fighting, they were evolving in real time. Their weakness, their emotional, unpredictable nature, was becoming their greatest strength. Outside the station, space continued to fracture. Impossible geometries danced between stars. Alien vessels that had existed for centuries simply disappeared. But the human station remained, a beacon of adaptation and resilience. Jae-sung turned to Haiwon, a strange smile on his face. "Welcome to humanity's playground," he said, "where the impossible becomes possible." The quantum anomaly continued its approach. The galaxy held its breath. Humanity was about to show why they were different. End of Part 2. The research vessel shuddered, its crystalline hull fracturing under impossible stress. Haiwon's world became a chaos of sparking circuits, emergency alarms, and the terrifying sound of structural integrity failing. She had watched numerous simulations during her extensive training, but nothing prepared her for actual catastrophic system collapse. The Centaurian vessel, once a marvel of technological perfection, was being torn apart by quantum forces that defied all known scientific understanding. Emergency protocols activated. Automated systems began emergency containment procedures, but they were futile against the dimensional anomaly consuming the ship. Transparent safety shields flickered, creating momentary bubbles of protection that collapsed almost instantly. A small rescue pod became her only hope. Haiwon's professional training kicked in, overriding her growing panic. She initiated emergency launch sequences, her fingers moving with practiced precision despite the chaos surrounding her. The rescue pod shot away from the disintegrating vessel, tumbling through a landscape of fractured space. Outside, reality itself seemed to be breaking apart. Strange energy patterns danced like living creatures, consuming everything in their path. Suddenly, a human rescue ship appeared. Its design was nothing like the sleek Centaurian vessels. It was rough, practical, with exposed mechanical components that looked almost improvised. Where Centaurian ships were perfect geometric shapes, this human vessel looked like it had been built by someone who understood beauty in functionality. Unidentified. "Rescue pod, we're bringing you aboard," a voice crackled through the communication system. The voice belonged to Donghuan, the human rescue team leader. The tractor beam wasn't smooth like Centaurian technology. It was rough, slightly unpredictable, yet it worked perfectly. HFY's pod was pulled into the human vessel's loading bay with a series of mechanical thuds that felt almost alive. As the pod's door opened, she found herself face to face with a team of human rescue specialists. Their uniforms were practical, covered in patches from different missions. Unlike the pristine Centaurian uniforms, these looked like they had stories woven into their very fabric. Donghuan stepped forward. He wasn't classically handsome by Centaurian standards. His face had scars. His movements carried a certain controlled energy. "Welcome aboard," he said simply, offering her a thermal blanket. HFY's initial instinct was to refuse. Centaurian protocol demanded maintaining dignity, even in crisis. But exhaustion and the shock of near-death experience made her accept the blanket. The rescue ship's interior was a marvel of adaptive technology. Robotic medical units scanned her simultaneously, while human medical technicians prepared treatment zones. It wasn't the sterile, perfect environment of a Centaurian medical bay. It was alive, responsive, almost organic. "Your vessel was hit by a quantum disruption wave," Donghuan explained, pulling up holographic displays. "We've been tracking these anomalies for weeks. Your Centaurian technology, it's too rigid to adapt." His words should have offended her. But something in his tone wasn't condescension. It was genuine observation. Yunji, another team member, began analyzing the rescue pod's data logs. Her fingers danced across interfaces, pulling information from seemingly impossible sources. HFY watched, fascinated despite herself. The human rescue team worked like a living organism. No rigid hierarchies, no perfect formations, just pure adaptive collaboration. When one team member struggled, another seamlessly took over. Their communication was a mix of verbal instructions, hand signals, and an almost telepathic understanding. HFY realized something profound was happening. These humans weren't just rescuing her. They were showing her an entirely different approach to survival. As emergency medical treatments continued, she caught snippets of conversation. They were already analyzing the quantum anomaly, developing potential defense strategies. Where her civilization would spend months in committee discussions, these humans were acting. Donghuan noticed her watching. "Welcome to our world," he said with a slight smile. "Where survival isn't about perfection, it's about adaptation." The rescue ship continued its journey through the fractured space, a beacon of hope in an increasingly uncertain universe. End of Part 3. The tactical training center hummed with an electric intensity. Holographic displays flickered, showing complex quantum anomaly patterns that seemed to breathe and shift like living organisms. HFY found herself integrated into a mixed-species research unit, a position that would have been unthinkable. Just weeks earlier, robotic analysis units moved around the team, their flexible metallic limbs processing data at incredible speeds. But unlike the rigid Centaurian machines, these robots seemed to have a sense of personality. They adjusted, learned, and responded with an almost intuitive intelligence. Donghuan stood at the center of the tactical grid, his hands moving, through holographic interfaces with a dancer's grace. "The quantum threat isn't just a physical phenomenon," he explained, pulling up impossible geometric projections. "It's a living system that adapts faster than any conventional defense mechanism." HFY watched, her previous scientific certainties crumbling. The human approach was nothing like her training. Where Centaurian strategy demanded perfect, predetermined responses, These humans were creating solutions in real time. Yunji, the team's quantum interface specialist, developed something that looked more like art than scientific strategy. Her hands moved across quantum computational interfaces, creating defense patterns that seemed to dance between mathematical precision and pure creativity. "Our strength is unpredictability," she explained, catching Haiwan's confused look. "The moment you become perfectly predictable, you become vulnerable." The training simulations were brutal, quantum anomalies that would have destroyed conventional defense systems were met with strategies that defied traditional military logic. A robotic drone would suddenly change its entire operational protocol mid-mission. A defensive shield would transform into an offensive weapon. Haiwan's Centaurian training screamed that this was madness. But her growing understanding saw something profound. This was evolution in its purest form. Specialized bio-augmented combat suits lined the training area. Unlike Centaurian armor, which was a marvel of genetic engineering and mathematical precision, these human suits looked almost organic. They could reshape themselves, adapt to different environmental conditions, respond to the wearer's emotional and physical state. During one intense simulation, Haiwan found herself controlling a hybrid defense system. Her Centaurian tactical training combined with human intuitive strategies. The result was something entirely new, a defense mechanism that could think, adapt, and transform faster than any known technological system. "You're learning," Donghuan said, a rare smile crossing his face. "Survival isn't about being perfect. It's about being flexible." The quantum training scenarios became increasingly complex. Entire star systems would be simulated, with threat levels that would have caused total collapse in other civilizations. But here, in this human-led research center, they were treated like fascinating puzzles. Robotic units worked alongside human specialists. Quantum computers processed information at speeds that would have been impossible just months ago. And at the center of it all was Haiwan, a Centaurian who was slowly understanding a completely different approach to existence. "Emotional intelligence is a weapon," Yunji explained during one training session. "Our ability to feel, to adapt, to respond with creativity, that's our greatest strength." Haiwan remembered her previous contempt for human weakness. Now she saw something entirely different. What she had considered chaotic was actually the most advanced form of intelligent adaptation. The training center's massive viewport showed the endless galaxy. Stars drifted like distant memories, quantum anomalies creating impossible landscapes between them. Humanity wasn't just surviving, they were rewriting the very rules of survival. Donghuan approached her, holding a specialized quantum interface device. "Ready to see how we really work?" he asked. Haiwan realized she was no longer the same person who had arrived on the human station weeks ago. Something fundamental had changed. The galaxy waited, full of impossible mysteries, and humanity was ready to meet them. End of Part 4. The final confrontation wasn't a battle. It was a dance of impossible complexity. Quantum entities that had consumed entire star systems now faced something they could never have anticipated: human creativity. Massive holographic displays filled the primary command center. Alien representatives from dozens of civilizations watched in stunned silence as the human-led tactical team prepared. Their response: Haiwan stood at the center, no longer a Centaurian observer, but a critical part of the defense strategy. Donghuan's hands moved across quantum interfaces that seemed to breathe with living energy. Robotic combat units reconfigured themselves continuously, their metallic bodies shifting like liquid mercury. Each unit was more than a weapon. It was an adaptive intelligence capable of making split-second decisions. "We're not fighting," Yunji muttered, her eyes locked on the impossible dimensional patterns. "We're communicating." The quantum entities approached, not as a traditional invasion force, but as a living system of pure information and energy. They had consumed civilizations that relied on rigid defensive protocols. Entire species had fallen before their adaptive intelligence, but humans were different. The first wave of attack came as a dimensional disruption that would have instantly destroyed any conventional defense network. Quantum barriers that had protected advanced civilizations for millennia simply dissolved. Yet the human-led force didn't just survive. They responded. Robotic units began translating the quantum entity's communication patterns in real time. Where other civilizations would have responded with pure destructive force, this team was attempting to understand, to communicate, to find a solution beyond pure conflict. HFY watched in awe as the tactical team worked. It wasn't a military operation. It was more like an improvisational performance. Each team member anticipated the other's moves without verbal communication. Robotic units adapted instantly. Quantum computers processed impossible scenarios in microseconds. Our weakness is our strength, Donghuan said, more to himself than anyone else. Unpredictability, emotion, adaptation. The quantum entities pressed their attack. Entire sections of space-time began to fracture. Dimensional barriers that had protected multiple civilizations started to collapse. But the human-led force didn't break. They transformed. Specialized quantum interface devices created living defense networks. Each defensive unit could change its entire operational protocol in a microsecond. Where a traditional military would have a fixed response, these units were constantly evolving, constantly adapting. Yunji's quantum computational systems began translating the entity's communication patterns. They weren't just fighting. They were attempting to understand a completely alien form of intelligence. Hours became moments. Moments became eternities. The battle wasn't about destruction. It was about communication, about understanding. Suddenly, something extraordinary happened. The quantum entities began to change. Their attack patterns shifted. They were responding to the human team's adaptive intelligence. "They're learning," HFY whispered, her previous understanding of conflict completely shattered. The final moments were silent. No massive explosions, no traditional victory, just a profound moment of mutual understanding. The quantum entities retreated, not defeated, not conquered, but understood. Alien representatives watched in stunned silence. Civilizations that had existed for millennia realized something fundamental had just changed. HFY stepped forward. Her Centaurian uniform, once a symbol of rigid perfection, now looked like a relic of a previous era. "Humanity isn't just a species," she said, her voice carrying across multiple dimensional frequencies. "It's an approach to existence, an ability to adapt, to understand, to transform." The galaxy held its breath. Something extraordinary had just happened. Humanity had rewritten the rules of survival. End of Part 5.